There is a man right now who has done something no elected president, no prime minister, no UN secretary general has managed to pull off in the last 3 years. He stopped a war between India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear powers, 4 days of missiles and drones. Gone because of him. Then, while the world was watching that, he quietly inserted himself between the United States and Iran, 2 countries that had been bombing each other for over 100 days, and brokered the deal that Trump announced to the world on June 15th, calling it, quote, complete. This man is not a president. He is not a prime minister. He holds no elected office. He has never faced a single voter in his life. And I guarantee you, most Americans watching this right now have never heard his name. His name is Field Marshal Asim Munir. And he is, at this moment, arguably the most consequential, unelected military figure on the planet. Today, I'm going to break down exactly how a Pakistani army general who was fired from his own intelligence job, who was considered the most reviled army chief since 1971, just 2 years ago, became Trump's favorite mediator, Iran's trusted backchannel, and the hidden architect of Middle East diplomacy in 2026. Let's get into it. To understand Asim Munir, you need to understand one thing about Pakistan that most Western analysts consistently get wrong. They look at Pakistan and they see a prime minister, a president, a parliament, and they assume that's where power lives. It doesn't. In Pakistan, power has always lived in one building, general headquarters in Rawalpindi. The army doesn't just defend Pakistan, it runs Pakistan. It always has. Every major foreign policy decision, every regional alliance, every war, it goes through the military. This is the context in which Asim Munir rises. He was born in 1968 in Rawalpindi, the same city as GHQ. He graduated not from the prestigious Pakistan Military Academy at Kakul, but from the Officers Training School at Mangla, a detail that, in Pakistan's hierarchy-obsessed military culture, actually counted against him early in his career. But Munir had something rare, an exceptional intelligence mind. He rose through military intelligence, then became Director General of the ISIE, Pakistan's most powerful spy agency, equivalent to the CIA and NSA combined. Then something remarkable happened. In 2019, Prime Minister Imran Khan fired him. Khan, who had come to power with the military's support, had grown uncomfortable with what Munir was reportedly telling him about his wife, Bushra Bibi's finances. Munir was out. He went from the most powerful intelligence post in Pakistan to a quiet, sidelined career. Most analysts at the time wrote him off. That is the first thing most analysts got wrong about Asim Munir, because in November 2022, when Pakistan needed a new army chief, Munir was chosen precisely because Khan's enemies within the political establishment trusted him. The man Khan fired became the man who would ultimately destroy Khan's political career. And that is the pattern you need to understand about Munir. He has an extraordinary ability to turn adversity into strategic positioning. Munir's domestic consolidation, the iron grip, nobody talks about. Here is the counterintuitive truth that gets lost in all the coverage of Munir as a peacemaker and global diplomat. Before he became the world's most sought-after mediator, Asim Munir made himself the most powerful single figure in Pakistan's history since its founding. And he did it by systematically dismantling every check on his own authority. Let's run through the timeline. In 2023, through the civilian government, Munir pushed through amendments to the Pakistan Army Act that formally expanded the military's role in national governance, giving the army legal jurisdiction over economic rehabilitation, national development, and what was vaguely defined as strategic interests. In 2024, a second set of amendments extended the Army Chief's tenure from 3 years to 5 and removed the age limit entirely. Think about what that means. A man who was supposed to retire after 3 years now has a 5-year term, extendable with no maximum age cap. In November 2025, Pakistan passed its 27th constitutional amendment, described as moving Pakistan one step closer to authoritarian rule. This amendment created an entirely new position, Chief of Defense Forces, and gave it to Munir on top of his role as Army Chief. He now commands all 3 branches of Pakistan's military simultaneously, with no institutional counterweight. And Imran Khan, the man who fired Munir in 2019, He's been in prison since 2023, serving a 14-year sentence on what his supporters call politically motivated charges. Here's what analysts keep missing. The U.S. Congress actually introduced legislation, the Pakistan Democracy Act, H.R. 2311, calling for sanctions on Asim Munir personally under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Act. It cited his role in suppressing democracy and imprisoning political opponents. But those sanctions never went anywhere. And the reason they never went anywhere is the subject of the next argument. The strategic masterstroke, how Munir made himself indispensable to Trump. This is where the analysis gets genuinely fascinating, and where I think most mainstream coverage completely drops the ball. The question everyone should be asking is not how Munir ended up mediating between the US and Iran. The question is, why would the Trump administration, which was simultaneously being asked by US Congress to sanction this man, turn to him as their most trusted intermediary? The answer is a masterclass in strategic positioning that I want to walk through step by step. Step 1. The Nobel Prize Gambit. When the US and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran on February 28, 2026, Pakistan publicly condemned the strikes. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called it a violation of international law. Pakistan affirmed Iran's right to self-defense. On the surface, this looks like Pakistan opposing America. In reality, it was the opposite. Pakistan was deliberately establishing its credibility with Tehran, so that when the time came for mediation, Iran would actually trust the messenger. But simultaneously, and this is the key detail, Pakistan had already nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for mediating the India-Pakistan ceasefire in May 2025. Think about what Pakistan did here. They criticized the US strikes on Iran. They also gave Trump a Nobel Prize nomination. They maintained relations with both warring parties at the same time. This was described as calculated dual-track diplomacy. Step 2. The White House lunch. In June 2025, before the Iran war escalated into its second phase, Munir flew to Washington. He had a private lunch with Trump in the White House cabinet room, the first time a U.S. president had privately received a Pakistani military chief without civilian leadership present. This meeting was extraordinary for several reasons. First, it bypassed Pakistan's own civilian prime minister. Second, it established a direct personal channel between Munir and Trump. Third, and critically, it happened the day before U.S. strikes on Iran formally commenced. Secretary of State Marco Rubio later confirmed the depth of this channel publicly. Quote, "We are in constant communication with him. The highest levels of our government are constantly talking to him." Step 3. The Iran connection. Here is the specific advantage Munir brings that no Western diplomat can replicate. He has spent a decade building personal relationships with Iranian military and intelligence leadership. According to a retired Pakistani chief of general staff, Munir has a decade of dealing with Iranian intelligence, IRGC commanders, foreign ministers, and presidents. Pakistan shares a border with Iran. Pakistan does not recognize Israel. Pakistan has deep cultural and religious ties with Iranian leadership. Munir could walk into Tehran and be received in ways that no American envoy could dream of. By April 2026, Munir was traveling to Tehran for multiple rounds of talks, sometimes 3 trips in a single week. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi posted a video of Munir descending from his plane and receiving what was described as a fraternal hug. The White House officially credited Pakistan, calling Munir a helpful mediator, and saying, quote, "The United States is grateful for Pakistan's efforts to bring an end to the conflict. This is the counterintuitive reality. The man the U.S. Congress wanted to sanction for human rights abuses became the man the White House publicly thanked for ending a war. The strategic paradox, Pakistan's most dangerous gamble." Now we reach the most sophisticated layer of this analysis, and the one that tells us something genuinely important about where Pakistan is heading. What Munir has done is extraordinary, but it contains within it a structural paradox that could unravel everything he has built. Let me explain. Munir has succeeded globally by positioning Pakistan as a neutral, trusted mediator, a country that talks to everyone, takes no hard sides, and delivers results. That image was built on 3 pillars: the India-Pakistan ceasefire of May 2025, the Iran mediation of 2026, and the personal trust relationship with Trump. But here is the paradox. Each of these successes came at a cost that is now building up inside Pakistan itself. The India-Pakistan ceasefire of May 2025 ended an 88-hour conflict that began with India's Operation Sindoor, missile strikes on 9 targets in Pakistan, launched in response to the Pahalgam attack that killed 26 civilians. Pakistan struck back. India reportedly damaged 11 Pakistani air bases. Satellite photos were released showing runways made inoperable. In Pakistan, Munir was celebrated as a hero who defended national sovereignty. He was promoted to Field Marshal, only the second person in Pakistan's history to hold that rank after Ayub Khan in 1959. But filings reviewed by news agencies show that between May 6th and May 9th, 2025, Pakistan logged nearly 60 interactions with U.S. lawmakers, congressional aides, defense-linked personnel, and journalists, essentially an intense lobbying campaign in Washington, run alongside the actual fighting. Pakistan was fighting India militarily while simultaneously lobbying Washington diplomatically. The ceasefire, in other words, was not purely military, it was diplomatic. Analysis puts it starkly. Munir's handling of Operation Sindoor bolstered the military's domestic standing at a time when public confidence in it had been under strain. Meaning, Munir needed the war and its successful conclusion to reset his domestic image. Because before Operation Sindoor, he was described as perhaps the most reviled Pakistani army chief since the 1971 war. That is the hidden calculus of Asim Munir. His global diplomatic success has been running parallel to, and in some ways dependent upon, domestic political repression. Imran Khan in jail, the 27th Amendment dismantling civilian oversight, a constitutional structure rewritten to give one general command of all 3 branches of Pakistan's military indefinitely. The warning is explicit. As de facto ruler, Munir no longer draws authority from security performance alone, but also from the country's economic survival and governance record. And Pakistan's economy remains deeply troubled. Inflation, debt, and governance failures are not solved by diplomatic victories in Tehran. The strategic paradox is this: the more globally celebrated Munir becomes, the more his domestic position depends on continued foreign policy wins, which means he needs crises to mediate, tensions to manage, conflicts to solve. A stable, boring world is actually bad for Asim Munir's political survival. So why is the Western media missing this story? There are 3 reasons, and understanding them tells you something important about how geopolitical narratives get constructed. First, the Iran story is louder. The US-Iran war, airstrikes, Strait of Hormuz closure, oil prices spiking, global economic fear generated enormous coverage. Pakistan's role as a behind-the-scenes mediator is structurally harder to cover than bombs falling on Tehran. Mediation is quiet, war is loud, journalism follows the noise. Second, Western audiences don't have a Pakistan frame. When most Americans think of Pakistan, if they think of Pakistan at all, they think of Osama bin Laden, ISI double games, nuclear proliferation fears, and the phrase complicated ally. That frame doesn't accommodate trusted global peacemaker, so editors don't know where to put the story. Third, and most importantly, there is a deliberate ambiguity in Munir's own image that serves him perfectly. He presents himself differently to different audiences. To Trump, he is a reliable anti-Iran, anti-terror partner. To Tehran, he is a neutral Muslim-majority country that condemned the U.S. strikes. To domestic Pakistani audiences, he is the military hero who stood up to India. These are not fully compatible images, but Munir has so far managed to maintain all 3 simultaneously. Here is the aha moment I want to leave you with. The real story of the US-Iran deal is not about Trump's deal-making. It is not about Iranian fatigue. It is about the emergence of a new kind of power broker in the post-unipolar world, a military general from a country of 240 million people that doesn't fit neatly into any existing alliance structure, which is precisely why he can operate where no one else can. Asim Munir is not a peacemaker in the traditional sense. He is a strategic opportunist of extraordinary skill who identified a gap in the global diplomatic architecture, the space between Washington and Tehran, and positioned Pakistan to fill it. Whether that makes him a stabilizing force or a dangerous one is a question analysts are only beginning to ask. Let me give you 3 things to take away from this video. Number 1, Asim Munir's rise is not a diplomatic success story, it is a strategic construction. He built his global credibility deliberately through dual-track diplomacy, personal relationship building with Trump, and a decade of cultivated ties with Iranian leadership. None of this was accidental. Number 2, his global success and his domestic authoritarianism are not separate stories. They are the same story. He needs international wins to justify his domestic power consolidation. And his domestic power consolidation, the dismantling of civilian oversight, the imprisonment of opposition, is the thing that keeps his military machine stable enough to project outward. Number 3, what Munir represents is a preview of the geopolitics of the 2030s. A world where traditional great powers, the US, China, Russia, Europe, are too compromised, too distrusted, or too partisan to mediate between adversaries. Into that vacuum will step medium powers with specific geographic and relational advantages. Pakistan, Turkey, the UAE, Qatar, these are the new kingmakers. And Munir is currently the most visible example of what that looks like in practice. Here is the question I want you to sit with. If a military general with no democratic mandate, who has imprisoned his country's most popular politician, who rewrote his nation's constitution to eliminate oversight of himself, can become the most trusted diplomat in the world's most dangerous conflict zone. What does that tell us about what the global order actually values? Think about that. If this kind of analysis is what you come to this channel for, hit subscribe and share this video with someone who still thinks Pakistan is just a footnote in the war on terror. Because what's happening right now is something much bigger than that. I'll see you in the next one.